Do you know that rare feeling when a remake doesn't just update a game, but it completely redefines it? That's exactly what Capcom pulled off with Resident Evil's 2002 remake. From the second the intro hits, you can feel that dread setting in already. Everything looks better, sure, but it's also a lot heavier, darker. Like the mansion itself knows that you've been through it already and is waiting for you. The ammo is scarcer than ever, enemies hit way harder, and you're constantly weighing whether to fight, run, or just take the hit. It's familiar, but it never lets you feel comfortable, and by the time you make it to the end of the game, it really does feel like you survived something. So what was Resident Evil Remake? So this is one of those games that completely defined a genre. The original 96 game, it basically created the survival horror blueprint. There was limited resources, fixed camera angles, the pacing was super slow, and there was just constant tension throughout the whole game. But in the early 2000s, that first game was already showing its age. The pre-rendered backgrounds and stiff controls were iconic, but even fans knew it looked and felt dated compared to what new consoles could do. That's where the 02 remake comes in. It was built from the ground up for the GameCube under an exclusive deal with Nintendo, and this wasn't just a quick remaster. Shinji Mikami, the original director, came back because he felt the first game didn't fully capture the vision he had in his head back in '96. The new hardware meant he could finally do things that weren't possible before. Lighting, shadows, particle effects, all of it working together to make the mansion feel like an actual living, breathing place instead of just a static backdrop. In the beginning, the plan was simple, just update the visuals, but that changed pretty quickly once development started. The team realized that if they only gave it a visual overhaul, it'd feel pretty hollow, like putting a new coat of paint on something that was already structurally sound. So they went a lot deeper. They rebuilt puzzles, reworked item locations, and reimagined a lot of the encounters. The result was something that didn't just look new, it played like a different game, while still honoring what made the original great. And that's a tough balance to strike. Mikami's team knew they were walking a fine line. Change too much and people would say this isn't Resident Evil. Change too little and people would call it a lazy remake. So they threaded the needle, keeping the spirit of the original intact, but layering in new mechanics and a lot of surprises. One of the best examples of that is the Crimson Heads, where the zombies could come back stronger if you didn't burn them or decapitate them. That single addition completely changed how you move through the mansion. It turned backtracking into a real threat and forced players to rethink every choice they made. Combine that with the new defensive items and how limited ammo is this time around, and you've got a version of Resident Evil that's somehow more stressful than the original. And that's really saying something. Even visually, the tone shifted a lot. The mansion doesn't just look cleaner or better, it feels dirtier. Some rooms feel polished and, proper, but others look really grimy and decayed, almost sickly. It's like the environment itself became another antagonist, even more so than the original. The remake leaned hard into atmosphere, the darkness, lighting, the quiet moments when you're staring into a hallway wondering what's waiting around the corner. When it finally released, the critics loved it. Everyone agreed it was how you do a remake. But even with all that praise, it didn't explode commercially the way Capcom hoped. It sold over 1 million copies, which sounds pretty big now, but at the time they saw it as underperforming. Still, its impact reached way beyond its sales. It proved that remakes could be something more than just nostalgia projects. Looking back, this remake feels like the turning point, the moment Capcom started treating Resident Evil like a serious cinematic experience, not just a survival horror game, or an over-the-top movie like Code Veronica. And the crazy part is, they didn't just remake a classic, they somehow took a game that was already legendary and managed to make it feel brand new again. What makes this remake so impressive isn't in what it changes, but what it didn't. Capcom could have easily modernized everything. They could have switched to a free camera, updated the controls, and just streamlined the pacing to make it more accessible. But they didn't. They doubled down on what made the original so scary. And in doing that, they proved that tension isn't always about speed or control. Sometimes it's about what you can't do. The remake keeps the fixed camera angles and tank controls fully intact. And on paper that sounds like a dated choice, but really, it's genius. Those elements are the backbone of how Resident Evil builds its fear. Every turn, every hallway, every step, you're moving in a space that's constantly framing you like a horror film. The camera doesn't just show the mansion, it directs it. Sometimes it hides what's around the corner, sometimes it stares straight down at you from the ceiling, making you feel small and exposed. Every shot is intentional. That deliberate pacing, that sense of being just slightly restricted, is exactly what gives the game its power. You're not supposed to feel slick or fast, you're supposed to feel vulnerable. You're fighting both the controls and your own fear, and the game knows it. That tension is what defines survival horror, and Capcom made the choice to preserve it even when they could have made it smoother. But while the structure stayed the same, the atmosphere evolved in ways that feel monumental. The lighting, the sound design, the tiny environmental details, they all give the Spencer Mansion a pulse. The thunder outside that rolls through the halls, the candles flickering. Even the static backgrounds feel like they're alive. They're more like hand-painted oil paintings than game assets. There's this richness to every shot that the original hardware just couldn't do. And this is where the remake starts to show its real brilliance. It respects the old framework, but it uses new technology to amplify what made it work. It doesn't fix Resident Evil, it lets Resident Evil be better. The GameCube's hardware allowed Capcom to pull off something rare for its time. It blended pre-rendered environments with real-time lighting and shadows. The characters cast reflections that move across the walls. Fog drifts across the screen when they used to be still. The mansion's famous silence is now broken by zombie moans and doors being pounded on, and these distant echoes. It's all subtle, but it works on your subconscious. You're no longer just walking through a painted room. You're walking through something that feels genuinely haunted. And that decision to not modernize it, to keep those so-called dated mechanics, is exactly what makes it timeless. Every single movement feels intentional. When you raise your weapon, it's deliberate. When you reload, it takes time. When you miss, you really feel it, and it really builds your panic. Every choice really carries weight in this one. There's no button to bail you out, no auto-aim to guarantee you a headshot. You start to realize how much the structure itself is part of the fear. In most modern horror games, the player chooses the pace, but here the game does it for you. You move how it wants you to move. You see exactly what it allows you. It's like being trapped inside a nightmare where even your own hands feel slightly unresponsive. And that lack of freedom is exactly what makes it so suffocating. Capcom knew what they had. They didn't want to reinvent Resident Evil, they wanted to reintroduce it. To show how the same foundation that defined the genre could still hold up, even 6 years later, under new technology and new expectations. They trusted that players didn't need everything to be faster or smoother, they just needed it to feel real. And it does. Because even though everything looks cleaner now, higher resolution and sharper details, it's not comfortable. The mansion's beauty hides decay. You'll walk into rooms that are spotless and stumble into others that look diseased, moldy and grimy, bloodstains. It's like the house itself is trying to reject you. By keeping the same framing, the same tension, and the same methodical pacing, Capcom didn't just preserve a classic, they preserved the very philosophy of what made survival horror powerful in the first place.
Not really our standard operation. Jill, our first priority is to get out of here.
I agree.
There are still rooms in that mansion we can't get into because they're locked up. I've been looking for ways to...
Okay, if there's anything, I'll go back to the other mansion.
I'm counting on you.
This wasn't nostalgia, it was reverence, and understanding that fear isn't about graphics or control schemes, it's about rhythm. It's about what's just outside your sightline. The remake could have chased trends, but instead it honored its DNA. It respects the past without being chained to it, and that's where real preservation happens. Hey, just real quick, if you made it this far, be sure to hit that sub button. There's a lot of videos on the channel like this already and a lot more coming. I'm covering every Resident Evil game, and when I say every, I mean every. Gaiden, Dead Aim, the Wii ones, all of them. The channel's been skyrocketing lately. We've grown almost 2,000 subs just in the last month, and we're about to cross 4,000. That's insane. And I really couldn't appreciate you all more. Be sure to like and comment too. Did you like the remake? What'd you think about it? I really want to know your all's take on it. And for all my mobile viewers, don't forget to click the hype button if you're enjoying the video. It actually really helps a ton. It's basically your way of telling the algorithm, hey, this video's good, push it to more people. The Resident Evil 2 video I did, it even hit the top 100 on the leaderboard, and it's now the biggest video on the channel because of that. So it really does help. I also have a Discord that's starting to get pretty active. If you want to hang out with me while I'm working on these new videos, that's the place to do it. It's also the best way to drop your video requests, especially if you've got some obscure childhood favorite nobody talks about anymore. I will. Seriously though, thank you all. This is turning into a dream I've had since high school. I've actually started even paying bills from YouTube, and that's something I never thought I'd say. But you all are amazing, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Alright, let's get back into this remake.
That's for sure.
Hey, Whisker, where's Chris?
Jill, no. You don't want to go back out there.
The biggest changes in the remake aren't what you see, but more so in what you expect. That's what makes this version so brilliant. It's not about the flashy new monsters or modern mechanics. It's about taking everything you think you know about survival horror and twisting it until even your old habits start working against you. Like the Crimson Heads, for example. The moment this remake stops being nostalgic and starts being sadistic. In the original game, a dead zombie was a dead zombie. You'd clear a room, check it off mentally, and move on. But in the remake, killing something doesn't always mean it's over. If you don't destroy its head or burn the body, that corpse can get back up later. And they're faster, louder, and a lot meaner. The first time it happens is pretty jarring. You pass through a hallway you thought was safe, and suddenly a zombie that's been laying there jumps up and starts chasing you. It's not just a jump scare, it's a betrayal. The game trained you for years that when you killed a zombie, you killed it, outside of a couple bosses, and now it's punishing you for believing that. So now every corpse becomes a decision. Do you waste the precious shotgun shell and risk running dry? Or do you carry a lighter and kerosene and spend inventory space on prevention instead of healing? Or do you leave that zombie on the ground and hope you never have to come back to the hallway again? That's the brilliance of the Crimson Heads. They turn your victories into tension. Every win adds another thread of anxiety for later. You stop thinking about killing enemies as progress and start thinking about it as a future problem waiting to happen. And then there's the new defensive items, and these may be one of the most subtle but smart things that Capcom changed. In the original, a grab usually meant you were taking damage. There's not really any questions around that. Here, you get a chance. There's knives, tasers, and grenades. They act like emergency brakes. If a zombie grabs you, you can jam one into its mouth or shock it off. It sounds like a small thing, but it changes the entire mindset of how you handle encounters. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about timing and strategy. Do you use the defensive item early to save health, or do you risk holding on to it in case something worse is waiting down the hall? And if you're playing as Jill, that taser can be a difference between making it through a choke point or losing 20 minutes of progress. What's smart is that these tools don't make you stronger, they make your failure more deliberate. You still feel vulnerable, but now every hit, every panic button, every escape has weight behind it. Even the layout of the mansion's changed a little bit, and it's easy to overlook how effective it is. Capcom didn't rebuild the entire structure, they just moved things around and added a few extra areas. Just enough to mess with your memory. A hallway you used to rely on for quick travel might lead you to a dead end now. A safe room might be relocated. A simple puzzle may have an extra step or be in a different location that throws you off your rhythm. It's not about disorientation, it's about mistrust. The game weaponizes nostalgia by making you second-guess yourself. You recognize the wallpaper, the doors, the sound of the thunder outside, but you don't know what's waiting behind them anymore. The remake doesn't just want to scare you, it wants to make you doubt your own experience. And then there's the sound design, which might be one of the most unappreciated parts of the remake. It's not loud or constant, it's subtle. You hear these faint cracks or doors being banged on. They make you stop mid-step. A low growl somewhere out of frame that might not even be there, the rain tapping on the windows, the distant rumble of thunder that fades just long enough to make the silence worse. The mansion doesn't feel like a set piece, it feels like it's alive. You hear it shift around you, and after a while you start to realize how much of the fear in this game comes from the sound. Capcom knew what they were doing. They understood that horror isn't about what's on the screen, it's what's in your head. Every little system in this remake plays with that idea. Crimson heads mess with your confidence, the defensive items mess with your instincts. The layout changes mess with your memory, and sound design messes with your imagination. The remake isn't trying to scare you once, it's trying to make you dread returning, to that hallway, to that corner, to that body you didn't burn. One of the biggest additions in this remake isn't a system or a new scare, it's a story. I'm not going to retell the full plot again here, I already broke that down in the video I did on the original game, but instead I want to focus on the new story threads this remake kind of weaves in, and how one tragic character completely changes what Resident Evil's about, and that's Lisa Trevor. She's not in the 96 version at all, and yet somehow she feels like she's always belonged here. Lisa is the daughter of George Trevor, the man who designed the Spencer Mansion. He built this place as an architectural marvel. It's a maze of secrets, puzzles, traps, and mechanisms. But what he didn't know was that he was building his family's tomb. After the mansion was complete, Lisa and her mom, Jessica, were brought here under false promises. They were told they'd be staying with Lord Spencer, only to be taken captive and experimented on by Umbrella. Jessica didn't survive, Lisa did. The experiments were meant to test the early stages of the progenitor virus, the same experiments that would eventually lead to the creation of the T-virus. But Lisa's body didn't just reject or adapt, it absorbed. She became something in between, unkillable, broken, and continuously suffering. The remake doesn't treat her like a monster in the traditional sense. She's not a boss to overcome, she's a ghost story that follows you. You can usually hear her before you see her moaning or her chains dragging. They echo through the game. Her breathing's heavy and uneven, every step she takes it feels like it hurts. And when she finally does appear, she's hunched over, wearing a mask made of human skin. You realize this isn't another zombie, this is the human cost of Umbrella's success. Lisa's presence changes everything. She reframes the mansion from being just a haunted house full of experiments to a graveyard built on human suffering. She's not chasing you out of malice, she's still searching for her mommy. Wandering the same halls for decades, trapped in a cycle of pain and confusion. When you find her mother's corpse and the diary entry scattered throughout the mansion, it all clicks into place. This wasn't an accident, it was a cover-up. Umbrella didn't just destroy a family, they erased them. That's what makes Lisa so powerful. In a game full of viruses and monsters, she's the only one who's human. Everything about her, the way she moves, the way the music slows down when she's near, is designed to make you feel pity, but not fear. Even her final moments reflect that. You don't kill her, you just let her fall. Thematically, she's the soul of this remake. Resident Evil has always been about survival, about pushing through the nightmare, but Lisa reminds us what the nightmare costs. She's the consequence, the collateral damage, the piece that makes the horror feel real. The remake doesn't just make the mansion scarier, it gives it a heart, a broken one. Lisa Trevor isn't a boss fight. She's a reminder of what this place cost and what survival even means here. This remake didn't just bring a classic back to life, it set the standard for what a remake should be. It's not just prettier graphics or smoother controls, but it's a full reimagining that respects its own history. This game proves something most studios didn't realize at the time, that nostalgia isn't enough. You can't just repackage the past and expect people to feel the same magic. You have to understand what made it special in the first place, and then rebuild it with that same care, that same intent. That's what this remake did. It didn't erase the original, it preserved it by refining its ideas, not replacing them. The fixed camera angles and deliberate pacing, the constant tension, those weren't limitations, they were part of the language of survival horror. Capcom didn't shy away from that, they leaned into it, modernized the visuals and audio, but kept the bones intact. And that decision rippled through the industry for decades. Without this remake, would we have Resident Evil 2 Remake? Would we even have Dead Space Remake? Or the other current wave of high-quality reimaginings that aim to restore rather than replace? This game quietly defined the philosophy of preservation through innovation. It's easy to forget now, but back in '02, this wasn't a massive blockbuster launch. It was a GameCube exclusive. trapped on one console during a weird time for Capcom, when the series was experimenting with different directions. Because of that, it flew under the radar for years. Most players didn't even get to experience it until it was finally re-released on newer hardware. And in a way, that kind of worked in its favor. While everyone else was trying to chase trends or do something to make a lot of money, this game sat in the background, waiting. It became this cult legend, talked about by fans as the example of how to remake a game right. The one that didn't just look better, but felt better. When you play it now, or 20 years later, it still holds up, visually, tonally, structurally. That's not nostalgia, it's craftsmanship. You can see the blueprint for every modern remake here. The respect for pacing, the willingness to add meaningful new content, and the understanding that preservation doesn't mean staying still. Capcom easily could have done a simple remaster. They could have cashed in on the brand and moved on, but instead they treated their own legacy with reverence. They believed their old work still had something to say, and that belief changed everything. Because when a developer takes the time to rebuild something out of love instead of obligation, you don't just get a remake, you get a resurrection. This game didn't just redefine Resident Evil, it redefined how we remember games themselves. At this point in the video, we've talked a lot about what the remake did for gaming, how it reshaped what a remake could be, and how it carried the legacy of the original forward without losing what made it special. But there's something bigger here too, something that mirrors why this channel even exists in the first place. Jake's Save Room isn't just about nostalgia, it's about preservation. Not just preserving the games, but preserving us. Who we were when we first played them. Because when you start one of these old games, we're not just revisiting pixels or soundtracks. We're revisiting moments. The first time we got scared by that zombie in the hallway, the smell of the house we grew up in, the way the light hit the screen in a dark room, maybe the sound of our grandma's voice in the background. That's the part no one else seems to talk about on YouTube. A lot of people online cover old games, but they treat them like artifacts. Mechanical breakdowns, technical comparisons, surface level nostalgia. I'm not interested in that. I care about what these games meant, because for some of us, they were more than entertainment. They were our safe place, a world to escape into when the real one was on fire. When I talk about preserving these games, that's what I mean. I'm not just archiving a genre. I'm keeping alive the pieces of our lives attached to them. Maybe it's the game you played every weekend at your grandma's house. Maybe it's the one that helped you through something heavy. I lost a lot of family a couple years ago, nearly everyone except my parents and wife and kids. And when I go back to some of these games, it's like those people are still there with me for a little while. I mean, I can still picture sitting on the edge of the bed playing Resident Evil with my great-grandma and seeing that first zombie and getting scared to death and then curling up watching Snow Dogs. I'll never forget that. That's what I'm preserving. Not just the games themselves, but the memories tied to them. I realized early on that no one else was really doing this the way I'm doing it. When I covered Extermination, I had searched YouTube and didn't really find anything but gameplay dumps and this game sucks videos. That's not what I want to make. I don't want to tear down someone's favorite game just to fit a trend. Every game I talk about was special to someone. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but it mattered, and that's reason enough to remember it. That's what makes this channel different in my opinion. I care about the games, about your memories of them. And I see it every day now in the comments and the stories people share. You're not just watching these videos, you're trusting me with your memories. You're telling me about the first time you played, or who you were with, or where your life was back then. That means more to me than any numbers ever will. So when I say this channel is about preservation, that's what I mean. This isn't about fame or numbers. This is about helping us not forget the times when we were happy, when things were simpler, when the world wasn't so heavy. If one of these videos can help take you back to that even for a few minutes, make you smile or feel something real again, that's everything I wanted to do. That's the mission with the channel. Not to live in the past, but to make sure the things that made us feel alive back then aren't lost to time. Because if we forget what made us happy, we lose a piece of who we are, and I'm not gonna let that happen. But if you made it to the end, I really appreciate you. This one's a little different. This is the first time I've gone back and covered a remake of a game I've already covered before. And honestly, I really hope you like it, because I had to approach this one a bit differently. And if you did, it helps a ton if you drop a like, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on mobile, don't forget to hit the hype button. It really does help these videos to grow a lot. I've also got a Discord set up for anyone who wants to hang out, talk about these old games, or just be part of the community. There's a link in the description. And make sure to keep an eye out for the live streams. I do them pretty often, and it's always a good time getting to play through these games and talk to you all at the same time. But next up, we'll be going over Resident Evil 0 and Dino Crisis, so be on the lookout for those. But, as always, I'll see y'all later.
Resident Evil.